Our first stop was Canterbury, the spiritual hub of England ever since a missionary named Augustine first brought the Christian faith here in the year 597. The medieval Christ Church Gate marks the entrance to the cathedral precincts, the bronze figure at its center a more recent substitution for the medieval statue of Christ destroyed by Cromwell's troops in 1642. It is an impressive sight, although the pigeons don't seem to share our sense of awe. Just inside the gate, we're immediately confronted by the majestic Canterbury Cathedral. Constructed in the 11th century on the same site where Augustine founded his first cathedral 500 years earlier, the massive proportions and soaring spires are a feast for the eyes. But it's not just the sheer scale that's entrancing. Everywhere on the exterior, architectural details pop out at you. The sense of scale on the exterior carries over to the interior. Here in the nave, the pillars shoot heavenward, their ribs intertwining to form an intricate pattern on the vaulted ceiling. The narrow side aisles only seem to accentuate the dramatic sense of height. The window at the back of the nave contains a stunning display of 12th century stained glass. One of its best-known images is that of Adam at work, shown here in the central panel. Directly above the screen which separates the nave from the choir stands the massive central tower which we saw from the exterior. From the inside, the roof opens up to reveal the ornately decorated underpinnings of the tower. Below it, the choir screen itself is richly decorated with ornate carvings and statues of bishops. Some of the bishops seem to be enjoying the pomp and ceremony. While one fellow, modestly, seems to be almost embarrassed by the attention. Behind the screen stands the oldest part of the cathedral, the choir. It was here that we enjoyed an evensong service. But wherever you go in the interior, you'll find wonderful dramatic spaces, filled with light from the cathedral's many stained glass windows. The cloister of the cathedral dates to 1397. It was from here that the king's knights entered the cathedral to assassinate Thomas Becket in 1170. The precise spot of Becket's martyrdom is marked simply by the name Thomas carved into the stone floor. Back outside, we enjoy a few final glimpses of the cathedral's exterior. Other sites of interest in Canterbury include the scant remains of St. Augustine's Abbey. It was here that Augustine first set up shop, ecclesiastically speaking, upon his arrival in 597. Nearby is St. Martin's Church, founded during the Roman occupation and believed to be the oldest Christian site in Canterbury. On the other side of town stands St. Mildred's Church. This Saxon church dates to the 8th century. On the south side of town stand the ruins of this Norman castle. A good stretch of Canterbury's medieval town walls are still intact, with circular towers positioned at regular intervals. Today, plants and flowers grow in the crevices. Our visit to Dover began with a walk along the top of the famous White Cliffs. From our position atop the White Cliffs, we could look back over our shoulders at Dover Castle in the distance. Construction began in 1181, and most of the castle does date back to Norman times. However, additions were made in virtually every succeeding century, since the castle remained an important military outpost all the way through World War II. At the center of the castle complex is the keep. This tall, imposing structure is the largest of its kind in Britain. As we enter the keep, we pass through this chapel, completed in 1188. Blue skies greet us as we reach the top of the keep. Peering over the edge, we discover just how far we've climbed from the courtyard below. As we survey the castle grounds just beyond the inner defenses, we see the Church of St. Mary in Castro on a promontory overlooking the sea. The church predates the Norman conquest, having been constructed around the year 1000 and restored in 1826. That's not a bell tower adjoining the west end of the church. In fact, it predates the church by a considerable margin. It's an ancient Roman pharos, or lighthouse, dating back to the 1st century AD and continuing to serve that purpose all the way through medieval times. From the small window next to this church door, the keeper could ensure that the fire inside the lighthouse never went out. In contrast to Canterbury Cathedral, the interior of the church is an intimate space, more in keeping with the proportions of an early English church. Bridging the gap to modern times, we enjoyed visiting the secret tunnels under Dover Castle, which served as a military command post during World War II. The village of Rye boasts a wealth of medieval houses tightly huddled along its cobblestone streets. St. Mary's Church in the center of town dates to the 12th century, with much of the structure having been rebuilt following a French attack in 1377. Several of Rye's medieval town gates are still intact, with the British flag flying proudly above. This robust edifice is called Landgate. Majestic Bodiam Castle dates to the late 1300s. This fairy tale structure is set amidst beautiful wooded grounds and is surrounded by a moat. It was built by Sir Edward Dalenrig, a knight who fought with King Edward III during his campaigns in France. Returning to England with the riches he won in battle, he married the Lady Elizabeth, whose family owned this land, and used his wealth to build Bodiam Castle. Later in life, Sir Edward was governor of the City of London and Keeper of the Tower. He also served as Knight of the Shire for Sussex in 10 parliaments. Wildlife is abundant on the grounds surrounding the castle. Tourists ensure that the fish in the moat are well fed. Even common animals like ducks seem almost magical in this setting. Toward the end of our visit to the castle grounds, we enjoyed watching a pair of hot air balloons getting ready for their journey heavenward. Dover isn't the only place you can see dramatic white chalk cliffs. In fact, there are several spots along the south coast of England. These are at Beachy Head, near Eastbourne. Not far away are the so-called Seven Sisters. One of the best places to view them is from the beach at Birling Gap. The chalk terrain continues well up into the hills, where we discover the Long Man of Wilmington, a prehistoric chalk hill carving well over 200 feet tall. The Long Man probably dates back to the Iron Age, although its actual age is a matter of considerable debate. Chichester Cathedral dates to the year 1076. It was constructed as a result of the Norman policy that cathedrals should be moved from smaller communities to major population centers. Considerable remodeling took place in the 12th and early 13th centuries. But the caricatures on these downspouts are no doubt a more recent addition. The unique detached bell tower was added in the 15th century. It's the only one of its kind remaining in England. This statue of St. Richard stands outside the cathedral. He was Bishop of Chichester in the 13th century. You might recognize the prayer of St. Richard. O most merciful Redeemer, may I know thee more clearly, love thee more dearly, and follow thee more nearly. Sound familiar? The interior boasts the soaring proportions characteristic of Norman cathedrals. But the most noteworthy feature on the interior is this Saxon stone carving of Christ raising Lazarus, dating to 1140. Winchester is one of the most important cities in English history. It has been the site of a cathedral ever since the 600s and became capital of all England in the 9th century. Recognizing the city's symbolic importance, William the Conqueror had himself crowned both at London's Westminster Abbey and in Winchester Cathedral, which he subsequently rebuilt in Romanesque style between 1079 and 1093. It is that structure that we see today. The interior proportions are impressive and yet graceful. The beautifully carved choir stalls are England's oldest, dating to 1308. In front of them, at the high altar, stands the beautifully carved Great Screen. Behind the high altar at the east end of the church is the beautiful 13th century Ladies' Chapel. In the tiny Chapel of the Holy Sepulchre, we discover these rare early wall paintings dating to the 1200s. The town of Bath is best known for its Roman remains, but it is also home to a beautiful medieval church. Bath Abbey was the last great pre-Reformation church to be built in England, with most of the work done in the 1500s. One of the most interesting features of the exterior is this depiction of Jacob's Ladder on the west facade. It shows angels ascending and descending from heaven in an elaborate work of sculpture. The interior is equally remarkable, illuminated by windows which occupy 80% of the wall space. The intricate fan vaulting high above the nave is breathtaking. Most of the stained glass is from the Victorian period. Right next to the abbey are the ancient Roman baths. The largest of its bathing areas, the Great Bath, can be viewed from the balcony above, as well as from the terrace beside the water. The hot springs that feed the baths bubble up in a room called the Sacred Spring. This area was not for bathing. It was a religious site dedicated to the goddess Minerva, whose power was thought to have created this phenomenon. You can trace the flow of water throughout the entire complex, ultimately exiting here via this ancient Roman drain, still serving its original function nearly 2,000 years later. In other parts of the complex, we find Roman mosaics, such as these from the 4th century. This Gorgon head would have adorned the Temple of Minerva, to which the baths were adjoined. Back on the terrace beside the Great Bath, the flames leaping from the torches only add to the ambiance of this ancient site. An ancient river running through this area cut a deep cleft in the rocky terrain. The river is long gone, but it has left us Cheddar Gorge. Sheer rock faces climb straight up on either side of the narrow winding road which runs through the gorge, affording lovely views. Long ago, the local people discovered that the caves at the base of Cheddar Gorge afforded the perfect conditions for cheese making, and so cheddar cheese was born. The mountainous terrain is home to many goats who are always fun to watch. Nearby, at the Cheddar Gorge Cheese Company, cheddar cheese is still made according to the original formula. They are happy to show you the entire process from beginning to end. The master cheesemaker himself even took us into the storage room to explain the aging process in more detail. Our first stop in Wells was St. Cuthbert's Church. This handsome medieval structure has a comparatively simple yet elegant exterior, dominated by its imposing south tower. But the most notable feature of St. Cuthbert's is on the interior. The 16th century roof contains some exceptionally fine wood carving, decorated with figures of angels, shields, and rosettes, all colorfully painted. A short walk brings us to the town square of Wells, where it is market day. Just off the square is the drawbridge and gate leading to the Bishop's Palace. But the main reason for visiting Wells is to see England's first completely Gothic cathedral. Wells Cathedral dates to about 1200, with nearly 300 original 13th century carvings adorning the west facade. While one area was covered in scaffolding, the remaining portion was a feast for the eyes, including this section showing Christ enthroned above the 12 apostles. Elsewhere, bishops and kings occupy prominent niches. On the south side of the cathedral are the cloisters, enclosing a small cemetery. Among the most distinctive features of the interior are the unique scissor arches. Sometimes mistaken for a modern addition, they are in fact a medieval construct to help support the massive central tower. On the other side of the arches is the oldest part of the cathedral, the choir, with some elaborate carvings and delicate embroideries. Continuing through the choir, we reach the altar, with statues and the main east window above. Behind the altar at the extreme east end of the church is a particularly beautiful round chapel. Its stained glass windows date back to 1310, with the upper portions still intact. Sadly, Cromwell's troops smashed the lower portions, but the pieces were saved to create the collage of color that we see today. In the north transept is a delightful old mechanical clock. Every quarter hour, the watchman rings the bells and jousting knights go round and round. The octagonal chapter house is where church officials met to transact cathedral business. The ribbings on the central pillar intersect those ascending from the side walls to create an intricate pattern on the ceiling. We concluded our visit with a respite at the cathedral tea room, right inside the cloisters. Malmesbury Abbey was founded in the 7th century as a Benedictine monastery. The present structure was consecrated in 1180 AD and represents one of the best examples of Romanesque building in all of Britain. Of particular note is the south porch, with its concentric rings of intricately carved stone. They, in turn, lead to another carved stone relief just inside. Parts of the abbey have long been in ruins, but other portions are still intact and today serve as the town's parish church. One of the more interesting features on the church's interior is this tomb of King Athelstan, who was laid to rest here in the year 941. He is considered by many to have been the first king of a united England, and he commissioned a translation of the Bible into English. The lion at his feet is a symbol of his high position. In the treasury, several rare illuminated manuscripts of the Bible are on display, dating back to the 1400s. The parish church of St. John the Baptist in Cirencester dates back to 1150, although most of what we see today is from the 15th century. The impressive tower was erected in the year 1400. The front facade is decorated with curious and entertaining sculptures. The nave also dates to the 12th century, although it was largely rebuilt around 1520. Of particular note is the rare pre-Reformation wine-glass pulpit made entirely of stone and dating to 1450. In the oldest part of the church are the remnants of this rare medieval wall painting of Saint Christopher. The charming region known as the Cotswolds has many quaint villages, like this one, Snows Hill. The light brown Cotswold stone has been used for centuries to build houses and churches throughout this region. The parish church here in Snows Hill is a good example. Another pleasant Cotswold village just a few miles up the road is Broadway. We also stopped at Stow-on-the-Wold. But our favorite Cotswold village was probably Chipping Campden. The town's church, dedicated to St. James, is in the Perpendicular style and has a dramatic bell tower. During medieval times, many of the Cotswold towns fared quite well because of the wool trade. In response, local merchants contributed sizable sums of money for the construction of beautiful churches like this one. As a result, they are known to this day as the wool churches. As we walked up to our B&B in neighboring Broad Camden, we knew we'd have an especially pleasant stay. Our room even overlooked the beautiful garden. And the next morning, we enjoyed watching the doves at the bird feeder just outside our window. Christ Church College at Oxford was founded in the 1500s. Both John and Charles Wesley studied at Christ Church, and Lewis Carroll was a mathematics tutor here. The dining hall, built in 1529, has many connections to Carroll's book, Alice in Wonderland. More recently, it was used for the filming of the Harry Potter movies. Christ Church Cathedral, around which the college is built, actually predates the college by several hundred years. While the first church founded on this site dates to the early 8th century, the present cathedral was constructed between 1150 and 1210. The interior of the church is an architectural gem. Its intricately carved vaulted ceiling dates to the 1400s. This is complemented by numerous other sculptural details, funerary monuments, and a wealth of stained glass. The University Church of St. Mary's dates to the 13th century. The bell tower is the oldest part of the church, constructed in 1280. The church will forever be associated with the Protestant martyrs Ridley, Latimer, and Cranmer, who were tried in St. Mary's in the 1550s. When Ridley and Latimer were burnt at the stake, Cranmer recanted. But a year later, standing at this pillar, he withdrew his recantation, pledging that the first part of his body he would place in the flames would be the hand with which he signed the recantation. From this pulpit, 2 centuries later, John Wesley, the founder of Methodism, preached some of his most stirring sermons, including the famous homily, "The Almost Christian," in 1741. The bell tower of St. Mary's affords lovely views of the town below, as well as a close-up look at some of the architectural details on the church itself. We get a nice bird's-eye view looking down on some of the almost fortress-like colleges that make up Oxford University. The church tower also offers a dramatic perspective on Radcliffe Camera. This distinctive circular building is one of the most recognizable landmarks within the university. Nearby Bodleian Library has been one of the world's great libraries since it first opened in 1488. The oldest building in Oxford is the Church of St. Michael, dating to 1040. Two of the historic features inside are the pulpit on the left and the baptismal font on the right. The pulpit dates to the 1400s, and John Wesley preached here in 1726. William Shakespeare stood at this 14th century font when he served as godparent to the child of a local innkeeper. The angel medallions in the window above the altar are the oldest examples of stained glass in Oxford, dating from 1290. And climbing the church tower affords another nice view of the city. We concluded our visit to Oxford with a stop at 2 local pubs, both of which may have been frequented by the likes of C.S. Lewis and J.R.R. Tolkien, although we confirmed that they and the rest of the Inklings met regularly at the Eagle and Child, where we enjoyed dinner that evening before saying farewell to Oxford. We hope you enjoyed this visit to Southern England. Thank you for joining us.